By way of announcements, we'd just like to wish all the fathers out there a happy Father's Day. May the Lord bless you and your families. The most important announcement we're making right now, and many people are waiting for, is about the reopening of the monastery. I have to explain to you what's happened and why we're not open today. On Friday, Alameda County Health Department began to permit churches to hold what they call limited religious services. So we do hope to reopen very soon. But according to the county and the state of California, and also our hierarchy, the churches can only reopen legally if they comply with the many guidelines and regulations mandated by the health authorities of the state of California and the county of Alameda. So we also will need to comply with these guidelines, as well as the guidelines set by our diocese and by the Holy Synod of Bishops of the Orthodox Church in America. We moreover need to receive our Archbishop's blessing to reopen. So the fact that Alameda County's Health Department began to permit limited and restricted religious services beginning 2 days ago, Friday, June 19th, does not mean that we are now open for visitors. Quite the contrary, our monastery remains closed until further notice, although we hope to reopen very soon. So until we inform you otherwise, or you see on our website that we are open, you can assume we are still closed. When we do reopen our monastery, God willing, very soon, things will be different than they were before the shelter-in-place order, which still exists, by the way. We need to comply with dozens of pages of guidelines and requirements issued by the state of California, the county of Alameda, our diocese, our Holy Synod. And our monastery will need to operate very differently than it did before the issuance of this COVID-19 shelter-in-place order. For one thing, initially we planned to be open to visitors only 1 day a week for 3 hours. That will be on Sundays from 9 a.m. until noon. And of course, this depends upon the blessing from our Archbishop. With his blessing, if he grants it, once we have found and trained the volunteers necessary to help us reopen, and have received our Archbishop's blessing to reopen, it will be only for those 3 hours each week. If our Holy Liturgy that will be open to you when we reopen will be held outdoors at our outdoor altar by the Redwood Grove. This is what the county's health authorities recommend, and this is what we plan to do. Also because that way we can accommodate more people. The guidelines say that you can only have up to 100 people or 25% of your building's capacity. So if we have it indoors in our little chapel, even if we consider normal would be 40 or maybe even 48, that leaves you 10 or 12 people to come to a service. This is the main reason why we're having it outdoors. When we do have our liturgy, it will be celebrated an hour earlier than normal, at 9 a.m. I know for some of you that might seem early in the weekend, but if you really do want to come and pray, you will have an opportunity. It's important to you. Our main entry gate at 34700 Palomares Road will be open only from 9 a.m. till 12 p.m. As I say, everything will be very different. When you arrive, all our buildings will be locked, including the chapel, which visitors will not be permitted to enter. We will have a place for you to light candles, by our outdoor mosaic icons of Christ and the Mother of God at the Redwood Grove Shrine. Only our hall in the 34700 building will be open, so people will have access to a restroom. We will not be having our traditional agape potluck luncheon, of which we're also fond. Following after the Holy Liturgy, there will be no coffee hour In fact, there will be no sharing of food and refreshments at all. Everyone who visits will have to wear a mask and maintain social distancing of 6 feet. You all know the drill. You all go to stores. You all know what's expected. The only exceptions to the face masks by the County of Alameda are in the instance of clergy serving at the altar at liturgy. And of course, we have a few people who lead the responses. It'll be very hard to hear them through Mass. But everyone else should be wearing a mask. We ask that you refrain from physically greeting other visitors. No hugging, kissing, shaking hands. All this defeats the whole purpose of social distancing and the safety measures put in place by the county authorities. We ask that you not kiss the icons or other holy objects. We will ask you to consent to having your temperature checked. We will ask you to register for the service by giving us your names and contact information. I know you're going to say, well, you already have that. Well, that's not good enough. I need it on one sheet of paper, everybody who was there that day. So that if someone turns out to be tested positive the next day for the coronavirus, I need to have a list for the health authorities of all the people who were exposed on that day at that time. Because if you do test positive one of these tests, one of the first things they ask you, where have you been for the past 2 weeks? And if someone says, well, I was at liturgy at Holy Cross Monastery, the health authorities will be contacting me. And I have to sign a paper saying I'm going to cooperate with them with these matters. And so they're going to ask me who else was there so we could contact them and warn them that they've been exposed, they need to be tested. So, I don't want to have for each and every person to go try to find their email address or their phone number, spend all day trying to compile a list for them. They'll want it then and now. So we're going to ask you to do this. I know you don't like to do it, and we don't necessarily like having to do it, but we need to do this because it's showing that we're responsible and we're taking the safety measures that they would like us to take. What's going to be hard are things like children will have to remain with their families and not run around playing together. Families can stand together at the liturgy if they live under one roof. And we'll have places marked in the field in front of the outdoor altar where people can stand with proper social distancing. Again, one reason why we're starting early, another reason why we're starting early at 9 a.m. is so that people have shade. Today, of course, is the first day of summer, and things can be very warm up here at Palo Rest Canyon during the summertime. So we don't want people to have to stand in the hot sun. And if we start at 9 a.m., people should have shade for the service. Also, there will be less breezes, so candles will be less apt to blow out. So, this is our plan to get our Archbishop's blessing for this plan. If he gives it, we hope to be open very soon. I'm aiming for next Sunday, but I'm not promising. You'll have to check our site to see if we make it or not. In order to open, we need a few really dedicated volunteers. We need people who say it's important enough to me that Holy Cross Monastery opens, that I will be there, and I will give 3 hours on Sunday morning to help everyone comply with these guidelines. I can't do it from the altar while I'm serving liturgy. Father Peter can't do it while he's serving liturgy. And of course, Brother Lubomir and Father Deacon Gordy are also busy at the altar. So the Brotherhood of the Monastery cannot do all these things. We need a few dedicated volunteers who will show up on time at 9 o'clock, not come an hour late, but actually be there at 9 o'clock and be willing to stay until noon in order to help us comply with these regulations so we don't get in trouble. If you're unwilling to abide by these rules we're asking you to follow, and that the County of Alameda is asking us to follow, and we're trying to comply with them, then it's just best for you to stay home. It's okay. We're limited to how many are supposed to be at the service anyway. You can always watch our services that we upload on YouTube. You can find the link on our website. But we do hope to reopen for limited services soon. And again, after liturgy, there will be no coffee hour, no sharing of food. You can say hello to people and all that. You can walk around on the property for a while if you like. meditate, but at noon we're going to close our gates and not admit anyone else. So please check our website, www.holycrossmonastery.org, to see whether or not we're open and when. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. On the first Sunday after Holy Pentecost, last Sunday, the Orthodox Church commemorated all the saints of the Church. And on this, the second Sunday after Pentecost, each local, that is regional, Orthodox Church commemorates all their saints, known and unknown, who have shone forth on their territory. There are today 15 local or regional Orthodox churches that constitute administrative parts of the one Holy Orthodox Church. And one of those is the Orthodox Church in America, which is our jurisdiction. And today we commemorate all the saints of North America on this day. Some of you who are immigrants may be surprised to know that there are Orthodox saints in America, but there are. Saints of all times in every country in these commemorations are seen as a fulfillment of God's promise to redeem fallen humanity. So other local churches are doing the same thing for their local churches. For instance, Russia is celebrating All Saints of Russia, and the same thing with other churches, Greece, and so on. The saints are encouraged us to lay aside every weight, as St. Paul tells us in Hebrews, which so easily besets us, and to run with patience the race that is set before us. The saints of North America also teach us how we should live and what we must expect in order to endure as Christians. Although we're a relatively young church, as a local church, the Orthodox Church in America has produced saints in nearly all of the 6 major categories of saints. Apostles and equals to the apostles, martyrs and confessors, prophets, hierarchs, monastic saints, and the righteous. The only category missing for the Orthodox Church in America, of course, is prophets, which were in the Old Testament. But all the other categories have saints of North America. The first divine liturgy, Orthodox divine liturgy, in what is now American territory, was celebrated at the northern latitude of 58 degrees 14 minutes and the western longitude of 141 degrees on July 20th, 1741. Just one day apart from today for the anniversary. It was on the Julian calendar at the time, of course, the feast of the prophet Elias. And they were aboard a ship under the command of Vitus Bering, for whom the Bering Straits are named that separate Russia and Alaska. He was an explorer in that century. Several years later, there was a Russian merchant, Gregory Shalikov, who visited Volon Monastery in the north of Russia. And he suggested to its abbot that it would be desirable to send missionaries to Alaska, which was then Russian America and part of the Russian Empire. So on September 24th, 1794, after a journey of 7,327 miles, the longest missionary journey in Orthodox history, and most of it on foot, and 293 days of walking and traveling, a group of monks from Volon Monastery arrived on Kodiak Island in Alaska. The mission was headed by Archimandrite Yosef and included hieromonks or priest monks Juvenal, Macarius, and Athanasius. and hierodeacons or monastic deacons, Nectaris and Stephen, and 2 lay monks named Herman and Yosef. St. Herman of Alaska, who is commemorated on December 13th and August 9th, was the last surviving member of this mission, and he fell asleep in the Lord in 1837. And he is America's first saint. Throughout the Church's history, the seeds of faith have always been watered by the blood of the martyrs. The proto-martyr Juvenal, one of the priest monks who was in this group of missionaries, was killed and martyred near Lake Iliamna in southwest Alaska by natives in 1799. So he became the first Orthodox Christian to shed his blood for Christ in the New World. In 1816, St. Peter the Aleut was put to death by Spanish missionaries in California when he refused to convert to Roman Catholicism. Missionary efforts continued in the 19th century with outreach to the native peoples of Alaska. 2 of the most prominent laborers in Christ's vineyard were St. Innocent Veniaminov, commemorated on March 31st and October 6th, and St. Jacob Netsvetov, who translated Orthodox services and books into the native languages of Alaska. Father Jacob Netsvetov died in Sitka, Alaska in 1864, after a life of devoted service to the Church. Father John Veniaminov, Joan, after his wife's death, received the monastic tonsure and took the monastic name of Innocent or Innocenti. He died in 1879 as the Metropolitan of Moscow and the primate of the entire Russian Orthodox Church in the empire. As the 19th century was drawing to a close, an event of enormous significance for the North American Church took place. On March 25th, 1891, Bishop Vladimir went to Minneapolis, Minnesota, to receive St. Alexis Toth, who was a parish priest, and 361 of his parishioners into the Orthodox Church. So what was so significant about this? America, at the end of the 19th century, had a huge number of immigrants from what was Austria-Hungary or the Ukrainian and Polish part of the Russian Empire at the time, who were Unionists. That is, at one time they were Orthodox Christians, but that by coercion from the governments of Austria-Hungary and Poland, they had been coerced into keeping the same liturgy, keeping the same services, everything external the same, but passing under the jurisdiction of the Pope of Rome and becoming part of the Catholic Church. That's why they're called Unionists, because they united with the Catholic Church. They were also allowed, even though most of these priests were married, to remain married. And married men were still allowed to be ordained throughout these East European territories. They called them Greek Catholics, or Unionists. But when a large number of them immigrated to America in the 19th century, it began to cause a lot of trouble in the Catholic Church in America, because, of course, Western Catholics didn't even know about the Unionists, didn't even know there were married clergy. And so many Western Rite Catholic priests from Ireland and elsewhere were saying, well, how come they can be married and we can't be married? So it caused a lot of trouble. So there was a bishop whose last name actually was Ireland. I believe it was Bishop John Ireland, who actually tried to force all of these Unionists who had immigrated with their wives and children, these Union priests who were attending Union parishes in America, told them they had to separate from their wives and their families had to be broken up because it was causing trouble for the mainstream Catholic Church in America. Well, Father Alexis Toth rightly reasoned, he said, well, how can this be? You may have to be married back in the old country, but I can't be married here. A sacrament's a sacrament. And so he saw the injustice of it. And that's when he led a movement where a huge number of Greek Catholics or Unions came back to the Orthodox Church of their ancestors. So that was a huge event in the history of Orthodox Christianity here in America. Another great saint was Saint Tikhon, beloved, the future Patriarch of Moscow, who was commemorated April 7th and October 9th. He came to America as a bishop of the Diocese of the Aleutians in Alaska in September 1898. At that time, he was the only Orthodox bishop in North America. And most Orthodox in North America basically were all under the Russian Orthodox Church. Yes, there were Greek parishes, there were Syrian parishes, there were Serbian parishes, Bulgarian parishes, etc. But as far as a bishop, there was only this one bishop. And that's where everyone got the ordinations. And that's who was administering the church. But this is when Holy Russia was still intact, before the Bolshevik Revolution. And as the only Orthodox bishop on the continent, St. Tikhon traveled all over North America in order to minister to his widely scattered and ethnically diverse flock. But he soon realized that the local church here could not be a permanent extension of the Russian church. Therefore, he focused his efforts on giving the American church a diocesan and parish structure which would help it mature and grow. St. Tikhon returned to Russia in 1907. And 10 years later, at the Sobor that followed the first revolution in Russia in 1917, before the Bolshevik Revolution, 3 candidates were chosen, among whom one would be the Patriarch of Russia for the restored Russian Orthodox Patriarchate, which had been dissolved by Emperor Peter the Great 2 centuries before. And he, although he had the fewest number of votes of the 3 candidates, his name was chosen out of the chalice and viewed as a sign of God that he should be Patriarch. So he became Patriarch of the entire Russian Orthodox Church on the eve of the Bolshevik Revolution. He died in 1925, after the Bolshevik Revolution. And for many years, no one knew the exact burial place of this saint. St. Tikhon's grave was discovered only on February 22nd, 1992, after the fall of communism, in the smaller cathedral of Our Lady of the Dawn in the Dawn Monastery, when a fire made renovation of the church necessary, and they found his relics. Another American saint, St. Raphael of Brooklyn, commemorated February 27th, is a native of what is today Syria, but was in his lifetime part of the Ottoman Empire. He was the first Orthodox bishop to be consecrated in North America, and he was Syrian. And his consecrator were Bishop Tikhon and Bishop Innocent Bustinsky, 2 Russian bishops, at St. Nicholas Cathedral in New York on March 13, 1904. As Bishop of Brooklyn, St. Raphael was a trusted and capable assistant to St. Tikhon in his archpastoral ministry. St. Raphael traveled all over North America organizing Arabic communities so they wouldn't get lost in the melting pot of America, but would keep their orthodoxy. And he reposed on February 27, 1915. The first All-American Council, or Sobor, took place from March 5th to 7th in 1907 in Mayfield, Pennsylvania. And the main topic of that Sabor in 1907, more than a century ago, was how to expand the mission of Orthodox Christianity in America. They drafted guidelines and directions for missionary activity, and statutes for the administrative structure of parishes were also set forth. In the 20th century, in the aftermath of the Russian Revolution, countless men, women, and children received the crown of martyrdom rather than renounce Christ. And two of those were actually among these saints of North America. One was St. John Kochurov, commemorated October 31st, and the other, Alexander Kotovitsky, commemorated December 4th and August 7th. Both served the church in North America before going back to Russia, before the Communist Revolution. St. John Kochurov became the very first clergyman to be martyred by the Bolsheviks in Russia on October 31st, 1917 in St. Petersburg. St. Alexander Kotovitsky, who served in America until 1914, was martyred by the Soviet regime in 1937 during the Stalinist era. To these, we can now add three more canonized saints. St. John Maximovich of Shanghai and San Francisco, whose relics lie at the cathedral on Gary Street in San Francisco, dedicated to the Most Holy Mother of God, where he was the bishop. St. Sebastian Dabovic of the Serbian Orthodox Church was recently canonized. He was born in San Francisco to Serbian immigrants, but his theological education was in St. Petersburg, Russia. He served as a priest in the Russian mission in America in the 1890s and the early 1900s. He traveled to mining camps where a large number of Slavic immigrants had come, Orthodox Slavs, and organized churches and missions. He's the author of several books and founded numerous churches. He eventually went back to Serbia, however, and died in 1940, and was buried in Žiča Monastery. When he was glorified as a saint just in 2015, soon afterwards his relics were exhumed and brought to St. Sava's Church in Jackson, California, where they reside today. So we have the relics of two of these saints here in California to bless us. St. Mardadia of the Serbian Orthodox Church also received his theological education in St. Petersburg, Russia. And he served as a priest in the Serbian mission of the Russian Orthodox Church in America before returning to his native Serbia. He returned to America as a bishop in 1923, after the Bolshevik Revolution. Because after the Bolshevik Revolution, that's when the Eastern Orthodox Church in America fragmented into different jurisdictions, each tracing themselves back to their own homeland and to the primate of their own native country. Before that, they were all under the jurisdiction of the Russian Orthodox Church. But when the Russian Orthodox Church was facing fierce persecution and could no longer minister to the Church in America, everyone turned to their homelands and reorganized their diocese accordingly. And Bishop Mardadia was sent to organize the Serbian diocese here in America in 1923. And he died in 1935. So as you can see, Orthodoxy is well established in America, and we have a cloud of witnesses of saints to pray for us as we seek to protect our Christian faith and expand it here in the New World. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.